games, there is that one decision that stands out above the rest. Tigers fans will remember that Al Kaline missed 2 months of that season with a broken arm, but manager Mayo Smith wanted to work him back into his lineup as they prepared for the postseason. And by doing that, that meant a significant change for Mickey Stanley. Here's that story.
I never forgot Mayo Smith called me into the locker room, called me into his office, and he said, we're going to try to get you back in the lineup. I said, no, you can't take Northrop out. He's had too good a year. I want to play, but you can't take him out. And then he said, no, I want you to work out third base. So I started taking some ground balls at third base just a couple of days, and I started taking a little batting practice. And then Willie Horton got hurt in left field. So naturally, Northrop had to go, and then I went out to right field, and I really started hitting the ball really well. And that's when Mayo Smith made probably the biggest decision ever in a World Series that any manager could possibly make, bring in a center fielder to play shortstop in the World Series.
Well, we had about 24 heads turn and said, what's Mayo doing? But we said that's the way it's got to be. And we all had confidence in Mickey. Like I said, Mickey was the best athlete on the team.
We thought he was nuts, but we were getting Kaline back in a lineup. And whether it was just sentiment plus talent, we wanted Al back in there. So when we all started thinking about it, I think we finally agreed. It maybe is not the smartest move, but I think we went along with it thinking, hey, yeah, that's not a bad move, because if anybody could do it, Mickey. And then the very first ball hit was to Mickey, and I think that helped. It just got that maybe jitters out of the way. He was scared to death. He said he was sick every night, and I can imagine.
I will never, ever be able to thank Mickey Stanley enough for him agreeing to play shortstop, because I don't know whether I've been a regular player or not had he not agreed to do it, because you know, Northrop had a great year, and I just came off the disabled list, and nobody knew exactly how well I would do, and but anyhow, Mickey Stanley agreed to do it, and of course I had a chance to play right field.
It remains one of the most memorable moments of 1968, and quite honestly, John Keating, the most significant decision, how Mayo Smith's decision impacted the course of baseball history.
And Mickey Stanley is fine, and he's one of the nicest people that you will ever come across, but the last thing Mickey Stanley wants to do is talk about Mickey Stanley, right. And that's why you were not hearing from him there. All right, Johnny, thank you. So many great stories in that unthinkable comeback win for the Tigers in the World Series against the Cardinals. They're getting together on the field behind us 50 years later. We recall Mickey Lolich for his World Series heroics, but remember this. He was actually sent to the bullpen in August because he was scuffling a bit, and then found his way back into the Tigers rotation and into history. He is the last starting pitcher with 3 complete game wins in a World Series. Faced with a Game 7, of course, it would be Mick on 2 days rest, and he would get the ball. And before his book signing here at the ballpark, we spent some time talking about that 7th game.
The drama basically was that, you know, at one time we were down 3-1, and all of a sudden we won in St. Louis, and here we are in Game 7. And when we were down 3-1 in Detroit, I mean, all the guys were like, you know, let's give them a good finish anyway. I mean, you know, let's just don't die right here. Well, we won, and then we had to go back to St. Louis, and we had the great game, the 6th game, a good blowout, and then I got called on to pitch 7 on 2 days rest, and I went out there and I did my job, and everybody did their job, and we ended up winning it all.
How did you feel on 2 days rest?
Fine, no problem whatsoever. When Mayo Smith pulled me out of the dugout in Game 6 when we had that big 10-run inning, he asked me, he says, can you pitch tomorrow? And my answer to him was, well, yeah, if you need me in relief, no problem whatsoever. He says, well, wait a minute. He says, I only want you to pitch. I want you to start. And I went, okay. And he was double checking me is what he was doing. He says, are you sure you can do it? I says, Mayo, it's my middle day of pitching on a 4-day rotation. I always go down in the bullpen, and I work out down there, and I will throw 100, 125 pitches getting a workout down there. And then I have 1 day off, and then I start. I says, 5 innings, I mean, that's routine. I don't care about that.
Mickey's just released a book written along with our friend Tom Gage called Joy in Tiger Town. It is a terrific read and available wherever books are sold. Up next, the guy who popped out against Lolich for the final out of the '68 World Series, setting off sheer joy in Detroit. We'll visit with Tim McCarver, the great catcher and broadcaster. He'll share some memories of those historic days when we come right back. With the Cardinals in 1964 and in '67, and thought for all the world that he was going to add another championship in 1968. We talked about it earlier. Cardinals in 1964 and in '67, and thought for all the world that he was going to add another championship in 1968. We talked about it earlier today about how crushing the defeat was when the Tigers came back from 3-1 down.
I'll tell you, the Tigers deserve a lot of credit because they beat one heck of a ball club, and they know that. And I think all the guys that have become friends of mine over the years, Al Kaline, Willie Horton, and Bill Freehan, all those guys knew they beat a good team, very good team, with a dominant pitcher. I mean, and to have it come down to Game 7, and we relied on Gibson. I mean, he'd won the first 2 games. He was dominant, 17 strikeouts, and then he won big in Game 4. I think it was 10-1. And during that game, there was a rain delay. I don't know if you remember that or not. But it was a rain delay, and Curt Flood, after about 30 minutes, we obviously, with Gibson going, we didn't want to lose Bob. And Curt said, let's go out and just play some catch. I said, it's raining out. He said, but if we do it in front of Eckert, the commissioner at the time, General Eckert, then maybe you'll think it's not rain. I said, well, I don't know if we can sell that or not. But we did it. And we're playing like soft toss. And Eckert's right there, and he's got the umbrella and the whole bit. And I finally said, Curt, we got to go inside. I'm soaked. I'm not sure I have another outside shirt here. But anyway, that was a fun thing and a funny thing. And Bob won that game handily, beat Denny McLain again. But, you know, Roger Maris had told us in August that if the Tigers make it, and they probably will, they're pretty dominant, it's not Denny McLain that we're going to have to worry about. It's Mickey Lolich. So Roger gave us, naturally, there were no interleague games in those days. And Roger Maris was our scout because he had come from the American League 2 years earlier. And Roger told us it was going to be Lolich, and sure enough, it proved to be.
Tim McCarver still doing some broadcasting work for Fox Sports Midwest. When we come back, we're happy to be joined by some of the champs, the guys who won it all against the Cardinals in '68. Truly a team effort. John Warden and Tommy Matching and Wayne Comer visit with us live after a break.
Louder, let's go.
Louder. Back in Detroit, we're delighted to have you back. We'll start with John Warden. You pitched in 28 games for the Tigers. You had an ERA of 3.5, right? That was,
yes, sir.
Yeah. When you guys get together again, what's this like for you?
Well, it's fun to see all these guys come back, man. It brings back a lot of memories. We had a great team. We were a very close-knit team. I mean, we were on the road. There'd be 10 or 12 guys go out to dinner together. You know, I mean, we were always right there with each other. But this is epitome. 50 years flew by like that. And I was the youngest one on the team, and I still am. You old guys there. But anyway, it was fun being out there. We've done a lot of things already. Went out to the ballpark
Yeah, the corner.
Over there
yeah,
at the Powell.
right.
Man, that's pretty nice.
Cool. Yeah.
That's real nice.
All right, Wayne Comer played in 80 games for the Tigers and got the chance to play because Al Kaline got hurt. What was it like for you? What kind of pressure did you wear when you were coming up in light of Kaline's injury?
Well, I was so young and just happy to be here that I didn't feel any pressure at all. I just did what I could do to help the Tigers win the 68. They're the greatest team in baseball was the 68 Detroit Tigers.
Tom Matchik joins us. He was the utility infielder for the Tigers back then. You hit a home run in July that year against Baltimore that was considered at the time to be the biggest blow that sort of determined the course of that season. Take me back to that moment and what that meant for you, Tommy.
Well, that was in July, John, and we were down 3-4, and bottom of the ninth, 2 outs. Dabrowski threw me a 3-2 slider, and I deposited it up in the upper deck. Although I thought it was 10 rows back, but Warden said there's still paint on the baseball.
Barely scraped the fence, man. Frank Robbins was waiting to catch it.
So he's gone from a fence scraper to an upper deck job with the passage of time.
Well, as years go by, we all get better, you know.
As you guys have grown gently into your older years, how much of a sense do you get as to what the Tiger fan base means to you?
Well, they've always had a great fan base here for all their sports. Their hockey, their football, their basketball, their baseball. They love the Tigers, though. And in 68, the city was in a lot of turmoil coming off of 67. And I've had a lot of people come up to me that are my age or older, and they genuinely say, thanks for saving our city. Because the racial tension went down. Martin Luther King gets assassinated, Robert Kennedy. And with us still winning, everything just sort of disappeared, and we're all pulling for one thing, for the 68 Tigers to be one of the best teams ever in history.
Wayne Comer, same question to you. How much of a sense do you get of the Tiger fan base and how much it's still embracing all you guys who were so much a part of our history?
Well, the Detroit Tigers are the greatest fans that I was ever with. I played for about 6 different organizations, and the Detroit Tiger fans were the best.
What do we make of Tom Matchik's mustache after all these years?
Yeah, it's still on there.
It's a beauty, huh?
Yeah, it's a nice one. That comes off at night, though. You just take it
off. Hey, but I wanted to say one thing like Wayne. I played with about 4 different organizations, and I want to say that out of all the places I've been, you Tiger fans are the best I've ever seen. So give yourself an applause. You're the best.
Hey,
You're the best.
It's great to see you. Enjoy the party all weekend, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks,
John Warden, Wayne Comer, and Tom Matchik, everybody.
Thank you.
World champs.
We love you.
It was the year of the pitcher in 1968. The mound was higher back then, but whatever advantage there was, Denny McLain ran with it and had a season for the ages. We'll look back at one of the most compelling figures in Detroit sports history when Tigers Live continues from the Call Center studio. Tigers, there was Go Get 'em Tigers, and my favorite, this one, Denny McLain. Denny McLain, there's never been any like Denny McLain. He's had his struggles, and the demons have been well chronicled, but for one summer, one baseball season, Denny McLain was as good as it's gotten. Mickey York remembers for us.
Denny McLain was just 24 years old in the summer of 1968. A hard-throwing righty from Chicago, the young McLain had a coming-of-age season in what came to be known as the year of the pitcher. He was intense. Some would say stubborn, even. But his talent, undeniable.
All I worry about is for my teammate. When they come to the ballpark, put the uniform on, what are they going to do? And Denny was 100%.
I put him over any pitcher for 5 years, anybody in baseball. This man had one of the best arms and know how to pitch the game better than anybody I've been around.
September 14th, 1968. Tigers fans from all walks of life flocked to the corner of Michigan and Trumbull to watch the Oakland A's take on the hometown Saskatoon Tigers in hopes of witnessing a rare piece of history.
Here's the set by Segui, the pitch. Swung on, a drive to left. That'll be the ball game. It's over the head of Gus, and the Tigers win it 5-4. And McLean has his 30th victory of the 1968 season.
Oh, Sandy, it's the greatest bunch of ball players I've ever played with. And I've been saying that for 5 years. They've just been fantastic. The guys, we've been making clubs beat themselves. And exactly what happened again here today.
Mr. Fletcher right back. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A great job, boy.
Thank you.
A great one. You better come to it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
Thank you.
McLean would become the first Major League pitcher to reach 30 wins in a single season since the Cardinals' Dizzy Dean accomplished the feat way back in 1934. But he wasn't done yet. September 19th, a mere 5 days later, McLean suited up to face a legend in pinstripes chasing history of his own. New York's Mickey Mantle arrived at Tigers Stadium with an impressive 534 career home runs. One more would bring the total to 535, a milestone that only 2 athletes in baseball history had ever achieved. You know what they say, greatness recognizes greatness.
When he took that mound, I remember the day we were in the dugout when Mantle hit the home run and he grooved it right there. They tipped each other's hat. That was the funny part. The funny part was when Pepitone came up next. Pepitone went like this to McLean right here. McLean threw it. He hit the third and got up, and Jenny just shook his head. No way.
I have a picture of it. The 31st victory for Denny. When Mickey came up, I said, look out there at McLean. Look at that big fat head. He's going like this. So, all right, high and tight, mediocre cheese. And Ernie thought it took like 4 pitches to get it where he could get it. And he hit a bullet. I mean, only McLean could do that, let's face it, you know. That's a big part of Tiger lore. I mean, that's one of the great stories, you know.
McLean would tack on one more win in the '68 World Series to cap off his brilliant season. His 31 regular season wins forever stamped in baseball's extensive history. And even now, 50 years later, no Major League pitcher has accomplished the same feat.
I had the chance to interview Mickey Mantle a number of years ago, and his eyes just lit up as he got a chance to retell that story of when Denny McLean grooved that pitch. So Mickey Mantle on his last lap could have one more lap around the bases. He was the last pitcher to win 30 games, the last pitcher to ever do it. It's our Just for Men player profile. McLean was within 4-man rotations. Now the norm is 5, and even this crazy idea of using a series of pitchers in a game is gaining traction. 31-7, basically automatic in the summer of 1968. You know what's not automatic? Anyone finding a string of success in Ram Pick the Stick.
St. Louis Cardinals, so he was a baseball guy even back in the 4th and 5th grade, and he said he had his little transistor radio he had hidden in his desk there, so he would listen along as Victor Martinez drives one that's caught in left field. But anyway, he was asked, you know, what the teacher did once she found out that he had it. You know how we always hear those stories, the teacher makes you, you know, read whatever you wrote in the note or those types of stories. She said she didn't even confiscate the radio. She just said, young man, I'm going to need you to turn that off.
You ever get caught doing that, Johnny, in a class?
Transistor radio or no?
Well, transistor radio is way before your time, my friend.
Well, not too much. But anyhow.
Your iPod or?
No, come on.
Come on.
Come on now. But anyway, it is cool. So Gardy, you know, that's his memory of '68. And I know there's a lot of people sitting back home that triggers an emotion for them right now. They remember where they were during that special time.
Absolutely. And if they don't, then maybe they're too young like me. You remember what your father used to say about it.
So the final game is a day game. Is that right?
Yeah. In St. Louis, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I remember being in school, watching it on TV.
That's one of the most memorable pictures in Detroit sports history. Bill Freehan.
Bear hug.
Yeah, catching Mickey Lolich. And Lolich with his 3rd complete game of the World Series. Beat Bob Gibson, who also threw a complete game, by the way. An 8-1 win. He homered. Not only that, he had 2 hits. And then, of course, the capper in Game 7. Complete games in all 3 of his starts.
27 innings.
All 3 wins.
20 hits, 21 strikeouts, 6 walks.
Nice bunt by Colton Wong. A shovel throw, one down. One of my favorite stories of Mickey Lolich, by the way, as we look at our wall side windows pitching change with Daniel Stump, Mickey Lolich told me Mayo Smith went up to him after Game 6 and said, hey, listen, I may need you in Game 7. And Mickey said, sure, I can give you an inning or two out of the pen. He goes, no, I need you to start. And after each inning, Mayo Smith would go up to Mickey Lolich and say, can you give me one more? Can you give me one more? And at one point, I don't know if it was the 6th inning or maybe it was the 7th, where Mickey Lolich then went up to Mayo Smith and said, this is my ball game. I'm finishing.
And he did?
Yeah, really cool story.
Nice, great
nice
gentleman,
man.
great baseball man, and they deserve every bit of recognition they get. John Warden, you've seen him if you've gone to fantasy camp. He's funny.
Dick Tracewski was the third base coach of your 1984 World Championship team. Alex Grammas was part of that, right?
No, Trixie was first base.
Or first base coach, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sharply to left field, and Brock heads home. The throw to Freehan is perfect, and plate of Doug Harvey calls Brock out. Now let's take another look. Look at Freehan's left leg blocking the plate. This could be the crucial play of this 1968 World Series.
That particular throw in the World Series, that reading the reports, Freehan read it, I read it, and all the outfield read the same report. And from the All-Star break on, Brock be at first base, go around the third, he drift into third, same way he did his second, drifting home. That particular throw that in the 5th inning, in my mind, I know that what's in my mind crossed me about how he drift. So I went over here, I was in the, if I come at the ball and be 10 feet either way, in my mind it's a do or die throw, get the ball, hit Coyote in the nose. That was our third baseman.
Don Wirt.
Yeah, and so when I got in, I was coming in towards the ball, get rid of it. Freehan saw out in front of him, saw him break his stride and let the ball come in. And because it was a must-do, it was a must-play, we had to keep the guy off second. If he went in Freehan, we went to second, that would kind of kept us in the game. But that's where we was ready, and that came back. We came back and beat him, went on, won 3 more games.
If Lou Brock slides, we lose in 5 games. And for a veteran base runner, and Horton makes that throw to right there to Freehan, and he just hit him in the chest, peeled him off. And Jerry Lewis gave me a picture, and you can see the foot of Brock, and there's the plate. And when he came back, Brock circled and came back to the plate, and Freehan tagged him in the stomach. And later on, we'd have like reunions, and we had a little 10-year reunion. We played a 3-inning game exhibition. Brock said, well, if you thought I was out, why'd you tag me on the way back? He goes, if you thought you were safe, why are you coming back to tag the plate?
You know, as it's going on, we think he's going to score. That was just automatic. He thought he was going to score, or he would have slid, I guess. When they called him out, it was such a big end to any rally they would have going that inning. So, and then I tell you what, I mean, you can sit there, people say, well, did you think you were going to lose or what? We thought. And it's easy to say after we won that we thought we were going to win, but we came back all year. And we just had that feeling about us that we were going to win this still. It was just, I don't know. It was just a gut feeling. This is not over. You know, we're going to do this. And that sort of propelled that whole feeling, and it fueled what was coming next.
History has shown it ended well, and the Tigers conclude the 68 50th anniversary weekend where they face the Cardinals tomorrow at 1:10. Arrive early for a pregame Q&A at 11:45 with members of the 68 team. The first 10,000 fans will receive a 1968 replica pennant presented by Comerica Bank. For tickets, visit Tigers.com. Denny McLain was the unquestioned star of the Tigers' 68 season, but it was Mickey Lolich who had the Cardinals' attention in the World Series. As it turned out, with good reason. We'll talk of the former World Series MVP when Tiger Watch continues from the Call Stand studio. Tigers Live on Fox Sports Detroit is brought to you by your local Toyota dealers. Visit buyatoyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. And by Family Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Family is not just our name, it's the way we do business. Tim McCarver, the former great catcher of the St. Louis Cardinals and a great broadcaster, doesn't do a whole lot of broadcasting games anymore. He sort of chooses his games, but he wanted to be here in Detroit for this weekend to see his contemporaries, those guys he saw in St. Louis with the Cardinals in the World Series back in 1968. The Tigers got in the Cardinals' way of winning their third World Championship in 5 years, and that was largely because of the presence of one Mickey Lolich.
He threw strikes that moved all over the place. He couldn't throw a ball straight. I bet if you handed Mickey a ball right now and told him to throw it, it would move somewhere. It may not be as fast. None of us are as fast as we used to be in a big way. But Mickey couldn't throw the ball straight. And he worked fast. He worked with confidence. He was like Gibson. Well, there's nobody like Gibson in many, many ways. But, I mean, Bob pitched terrifically in Game 7. I mean, Mickey Stanley got a base hit, and that was it through the first 6 innings. So the Tigers had one base runner. I think that's right. And then, of course, the 7th inning when Kurt got stuck in the mud. There are all sorts of things that you think about. But the one pat answer that I've had is the Tigers beat a heck of a team, so hats off. And they deserve everything they're getting this weekend.
Johnny Kane and Matthew Boyd talked about what Mickey Lolich was able to do in his career a little bit earlier. Get this, over a 6-year span, Lolich averaged 311 innings per year. These days, they'll throw a party for you if a starter throws 200 innings in a season. In 1971, there was that incredible 376 inning performance. 2 questions to Mick. How and why?
I had a unique way of preparing my body to pitch. And it all started one year in spring training when I came over from Tiger Town to throw batting practice. And when I walked off the field, Jack Homla was our trainer. And he says, man, he says, you got a fantastic arm. And he says, what do you do to take care of your arm? I says, nothing much, really. He says, I want to tell you a story. He says, there used to be a guy that could pitch and pitch and pitch. He'd start a game one day, and he'd actually start a game the next day. And he might take 2 days off, and then he would start again. And he would just pitch and pitch all the time. And I was so, well, I'm listening, but he never told me the name. And finally I says, well, who's this great pitcher you're talking about? He says, oh, some guy by the name of Satchel Paige. And I said, Satchel Paige? He says, yeah. I says, well, what's his unique way of being able to pitch that much? He used scalding hot water on his arm. Every time he pitched, even when he was getting ready to go out and pitch, he'd do it again. And he says it loosened all the muscles up. It made the blood rush to the area where you may have some stiffness, and you were ready to go. He was ready to go. And I says, really? And he says, yeah. So I started doing that. And when I say scalding hot water, I'd wrap a towel around my arm and up onto my shoulder, and I'd let the hottest water I could stand running down my arm. Guys would go to walk into a shower alongside me, and they go, uh-oh, Lolich is soaking his arm. They'd move down one because the water bouncing off me was burning them. And I always did it. And when I went off to the Mets to pitch, and I went to San Diego, the first thing they wanted to do is, oh, we're going to ice your arm when you're after the game. I said, no, you're not. Well, what are you going to do? I said, scalding hot water. What are you talking about? And I says, that's the way it is. I'm not going to use ice. And they said, well, okay. And I continued to do it even when I was getting older.
He was a physical marvel. It'll be fascinating to hear the ovation that Mickey Lolich and the rest of his 1968 teammates get on the field when they are honored in a ceremony that'll begin about 5:35 here at Comerica Park. All right, we're playing Ram picked the stick today, and we'll rattle through the rules. All of us around the telecast make a selection of a Tiger, hoping he hits a single because that's worth a point. We get 2 for a double, 3 for a triple, and 4 for a homer. You get a point for a run scored, an RBI, a walk, a steal, or a sac bunt. You lose points for errors made, strikeouts taken, and double play shame. We will take you through the picks today. And we'll do it in rapid-fire fashion because the ceremony is coming up. I've got the first pick. I'm taking Nick Castellanos. Simos texted he wants Jeimer Candelario, who had the walk-off hit last night, was a big winner for Johnny Kane. Dan Dickerson is in for the play-by-play role today, and he's got Mikey Matuk. Gibby likes Nico Goodrum, and Johnny Kane with the final pick of the day will take Victor Martinez, who had a couple of screamers in last night's Tiger win. Play along with us via Twitter. Go to Twitter and use the hashtag I'mWith, and you could win a Fox Sports Detroit prize package. It's going to be a parade of champions coming up here at the ballpark. Another chance to say well done is coming up. Tigers Live today is brought to you by Chevrolet. It's the Chevy Labor Day sales event. Ride out the summer in a new Chevrolet. Find new roads at your local Chevy dealer. And by Wallside Windows, we can do that. We are the factory. There's about to be a parade of heroes on the warning track here at the ballpark as those who were a part of the 68 World Champion Tigers and those who are still with us as we remember those who aren't will be honored again. Johnny Kane with one of our boys of summer as he joins us live. Johnny?
I'll tell you what, gives you goosebumps being around some of this greatness in this dugout here with John Ward. You were a rookie in 1968. You'd even make the big league club that year is a story in and of itself, and then to accomplish what you did. How often do you think back on your 1 year in the majors?
It's a lot. I think about it all the time. I mean, I was a 21-year-old kid, farm boy at Central Ohio, 150-acre farm. And man, my goal in lifetime was to be in the big leagues, since I was 8 or 9 years old. And to go to spring training in 68, knowing I needed bullpen help. Yeah. And I played 2 years of A-ball. I never played double-A or triple-A. You know, so one of these guys like triple-A, and they'd come up and back down. I'd never been out, just single-A. Won 15 games. So get a shot in spring training, I throw a couple innings, throw a couple more innings, all of a sudden, I'm in there like I led the team in strikeouts in spring training. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So then they traded Hank and Gary to the Dodgers about 2 weeks before the season. I said, I got a shot to make his team. And so the last weekend of the spring training, played the Cardinals. I went in the 9th, pitched the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Struck out 6, no walks, a couple hits, and no runs. And Wayne Comer had a home run by the 12th. Tigers win, and Wayne and I came to Detroit.
Well, listen, I know we don't have a ton of time, but if you could, your very first hitter you faced in the majors, you remember in 68, game 2.
Talked to him today, Rico Petrocelli.
Yep.
Yeah, that was game 2. Rico was leading off, and then I got through the lineup. I ended up with the bases loaded, and then got out of the situation. The 9th inning, faced the first 2 guys, Andrews and Adair. Third guy up, Yaz. Yeah. And just coming off the Triple Crown, takes a swing that'll knock your hat off, even if he misses. So my back leg is shaking like crazy. So anyway, here comes Freehand trying out. We called him Big Ten Bill. He trotted out, So I said, Bill says to me, he goes, hey, listen, don't let Yaz beat us with a home run. No kidding, Bill. I never thought of that. Jeez, I'm glad you told me that. Now my legs are really shaking. So I'm going, hey, no wonder you couldn't get into Ohio State. Jeez, you had to go to Michigan. And so, but then I struck him out on a 3-2 slider. And I said, yes, I own your butt, man. I own you. So it was a great first appearance.
That's unreal. John, great storytelling.
Yeah,
hey, man, enjoy the rest of the day. I know you've been busy.
Thanks. Good being with you guys.
Send it back to you guys.
Back to the studio.
There you go.
All right, John and Johnny, thank you. And if you sit next to John Wharton for a while, he's got 1 million of those stories. There's a ball game, by the way, ahead concerning the Tigers and the Cardinals, who met for it all back in 1968. And as you've seen, they'll wear the road unis of their 1968 predecessors. It's a first here at Comerica Park. And we'll recall the pop-up, the catch, and the hug felt by all of us. Thanks.
qualified returning employee lessees get a low-mileage lease on the 2018 Chrysler Pacifica for $289 a month.
Overtime. Hard to explain to the crew. Even harder to explain to a drill. But when the job has to get done now, you can't be worried about your batteries. That's why I went with the Master Force brushless drill and driver. It gives me up to 1.5 times the battery life. Time and a half? I'll take it. The 20-volt brushless drill. Part of the Master Force cordless tool solution. Master Force. Available at Menards.
We're proud to be the official law firm of Fox Sports Detroit in the Call Sam studio. 1-800-CALL-SAM.
And with three hands catch, the Tigers become the third team in series history to be down 3 games to 1 and come back to win.
50 years, it doesn't seem that long because I run into people every day someplace and they always bring it up. Oh, I remember back then, and it's great to be able to see some of the guys again.
It's almost like a dream thing. And I remember getting out there and jumping on the POW, you know, and all that stuff. And next thing you know, we're in the locker room.
50 years is a long time, but I think maybe when we get up in the morning and start trying to move, it is 50 years. When you come from behind, I think everybody loves to see that horse that comes from behind in a race, and we were more or less like that horse race.
Feels like it was yesterday for me. I'm 74 years old now. I lived the dream that year, but that was the greatest year of my life. It was 1968, being a part of the dream.
Can you imagine that? I'm 21 years old, and all I've ever wanted to do, play the big ones. Okay. No, really, you're going to be a fireman or police? No, I'm playing the big one. And to get to do what your lifetime goal was to do is just off the charts.
McCarver pops up. Here's Freehan. Detroit, the new world champion. And look at Freehan picking up Lowland.
The middle of the diamond at Comerica Park has been a history class this season. We've had the retirement numbers of Jack Morris and Alan Trammell, and now the 1968 world champs will be honored 50 years later, and so the stage is set. Welcome back via the Call Sam Cam. Ron Gartenhire was telling the story of being about a 10-year-old kid in class listening to the 68 World Series when he got busted by his teacher. She told him to turn that radio off, and he admitted that with a smile, but his love of baseball was said. Detroit baseball is history, and 1968 was among its highlights, and a half-century later, we remember.
68 World Series champion Detroit Tigers, presented by Comerica Bank. Please welcome the radio play-by-play voice of the Detroit Tigers and today's Master of Ceremonies, Dan Dickerson.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to host today's ceremony. What a summer it has been here at Comerica Park. Celebration of not only one of the greatest teams in 118 years of Tigers baseball, but also one of the most beloved teams in all of Detroit sports history. Before we start, I'd like to take a moment to welcome the family members and friends of the 68 Tigers, as well as the former members of the Tigers front office staff from that magical season who are all seated near home plate today. Please give them a warm welcome. It's great you're here. And now we ask you please turn your attention to the video board as we fondly look back on a team that captured hearts throughout the state of Michigan and beyond, bringing joy and a tremendous sense of pride to the city of Detroit.
Can the Tigers do it this year?
Well, Lenny, I'll tell you what, I'm convinced that we can do it. We've got some real good talent. I think we gained something last year by virtue of the fact that we had a lot of young guys who went through an experience we've never been through before. And I'll tell you what, if we can keep our guys free from injuries, we're going to win in 68.
How good is that? Tigers fans, it's now time to meet your 1968 World Series champion Detroit Tigers. First, a 10-year Major League veteran who served as the Tigers bullpen coach. He was really co-pitching coach in 1968. Please welcome Hal Nerrigan.
You and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me. So happy together.
Next, he made the Tigers roster out of Lakeland as a 21-year-old rookie left-hander. Then he went 4-1 with a 3.62 ERA in 28 games out of the bullpen that season. Number 39, John Wharton. He spent 3 of his 5 big league seasons here in Detroit. His pinch hit home run on August the 11th of '68 in the bottom of the 7th inning helped rally the Tigers from a 2-run deficit to beat the rival Red Sox. Please welcome number 27, Wayne Comer. Another rookie pitcher that season, this right-hander appeared in 38 games, worked more innings out of the bullpen than any other Tigers reliever. Compiled a 2.12 ERA, pitched 3 scoreless innings in the World Series. Number 43, Darrell Patterson. A 6-year big league veteran, he played 80 games at shortstop, second, and first base for the '68 champs. Highlighted by a walk-off home run with the Tigers trailing the Orioles 4-3 in the bottom of the 9th on July 19th. Number 2, Tommy Matchett. Of course, you know our next '68 champ from his many years as a Tigers TV and radio analyst, including as my partner on the Tigers radio broadcast for the last 19 seasons. We also can't forget his time wearing the Old English D, including the walk-off home run he hit on August 21st, 1968 in the bottom of the 10th inning against the White Sox. Number 12, Jimmy Price.
And whatever comes our way.
Our next player is the on-field link between the Tigers' 2 most recent World Series championships. He served as the team's first base coach in 1984. In 1986, he was a versatile infielder, appearing in 90 games, hitting 4 home runs. Number 44, Dick Tracewski. He would lead the league with 38 saves in 1973, but in 1968, he filled a dual role for the Tigers, starting 12 games, appearing in 27 others as a reliever, finishing 9-6 with a 2.39 ERA, left-hander number 18, John Hiller. With the score tied 1-1 against the Yankees, bases loaded, 2 outs in the 9th inning on September 17th at Tiger Stadium. Our next player cracked a line drive base hit into right field that clinched the 1968 American League pennant. Please welcome All-Star third baseman number 8, Don Wirth. His 1968 season remains one of the finest ever by a pitcher in the history of the game. He is one of 4 pitchers to win 30 games in the last 100 years. He finished 31-6 with a 1.96 ERA. He won both the Cy Young and MVP awards that season. Number 17, Denny McLain.
I'll soon be with you, my love. Give you my dawn surprise. I'll be with you, darling, soon. I'll be with you when the stars start.
Our next player spent all 15 of his major league seasons here in Detroit. And in 1968, he won the first of 4 Gold Gloves with his tremendous play in center field. You might also remember his rather smooth transition to shortstop in the World Series that year. A true testament to his ability with the glove. Number 24, Mickey Stanley. '68 is known as the year of the pitcher, and rightfully so, and yet somehow our next Tiger managed to hit 36 home runs while finishing 4th in the American League batting race. He finished 4th in the MVP voting that season. An 18-year Major League great, Detroit Tiger legend and hometown hero. Number 23, Willie Horton. His performance in the 1968 World Series is truly the stuff of legend. He started and completed Game 2 for the Tigers' first win. On 3 days rest, he started and completed Game 5 for the Tigers' second win. And then after only 2 days rest, he started and of course completed Game 7 to clinch the World Series. 3 complete games, 27 innings, an ERA of 1.67, the MVP of the 1968 World Series, number 29, Mickey Lolich. And finally, he battled back from a broken arm suffered during the 1968 season to hit .379, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs in the World Series. In 22 years, he won 10 Gold Gloves. He finished in the top 10 in the MVP voting 9 times. No one has played more career games in a Tigers uniform or hit more home runs. Please welcome the Hall of Famer number 6, Al Kaline. Our first speaker today is now in his 5th decade of covering and writing about sports in Detroit and the state of Michigan. And he counts the '68 Tigers as the most important sports team in his life. He was in the stands the day Denny McLain picked up his 30th win. Please welcome Detroit News columnist, Mr. Lynn Henning.
Mickey Lolich famously pitched in the 7th game of the '68 World Series against the Cards on 2 days rest. Well, now Mickey is here tonight, and he hasn't thrown a big league pitch in 39 years. So he's really rested for tonight's start against the Cards. But you're coming out after 100 pitches, Mick. Things have changed. Most people who follow the Tigers and who know about the city of Detroit's history appreciate the timing of the '68 World Champions. A year earlier, Detroit had been dealing with a different reality, with death and destruction, with sorrow and with shame, as what then were the worst urban riots in America's history exploded a few blocks from Tiger Stadium. Detroit was in pain. The city was wounded. It needed healing. It needed the '68 Tigers. The joy, the thrill that only baseball can sometimes create was a God-graced gift from April through October. Thanks to the men and to their departed brothers who are here with us tonight. And thanks to Ernie Harwell's voices, along with Ray Lane's, and thanks to George Kell and to Larry Osterman. The city that had choked in the smoke of 1967's burning buildings and rage instead breathed the glory of Tigers baseball victories. A man who then was a teenager living in the hinterlands of mid-Michigan can tell you from his experience how exceptionally extraordinary was this '68 team. Listening to Ernie and Ray on a transistor radio, watching on one of those nights when perhaps we had 40 games a year telecast and the games were television treasure, with George Kell, our baseball version of Walter Cronkite. By way of those Tigers broadcasts, an entire state and region had a season-long celebration with a team that had this knack for winning. The later the inning it seemed, the better. A 16-year-old kid watching a fast-pitch softball game in Fowler, Michigan, flanked by cornfields, can tell you about a summer August Sunday. A doubleheader against the Red Sox at Tiger Stadium, with Gates Brown hitting a 14th inning home run to win the first game and then slapping a single in the 9th inning of the second for a game winner. And how a person at that fast-pitch softball game brought his car radio to the softball field's PA microphone so that an entire Sandlot audience could hear the drama of Ernie's voice in that 9th inning rally. It was such balm, so soothing, because we all were hurting, all of us, not only because of the lingering horror from '67, but because 1968 brought added anguish, 2 assassinations, and the ongoing ache of Vietnam. To the rescue came the '68 Tigers, offering rolling moments of sweet escape. From the foot of Woodward Avenue throughout the Lower Peninsula, to Copper Harbor in the UP, to Chatham, Ontario and London, Ontario, and to Windsor, and to Toledo and beyond, this was everyone's championship season. To the jungles in Vietnam, where soldiers from Detroit and from Michigan could get a break from the pain, from the peril, from the strife and from the crucible of war. Listening to Tigers broadcasts on Armed Forces Radio, this team was more than a winner, it was a blessing. Those of us who were privileged to be here and to cover the fabulous '84 World Champions understand the majesty of that team. The 35-5 start, the weekend home runs from Trammell and Gibson, a pair each, to win games 4 and 5 and get a World Series parade rolling. But those of us who also were here for 1968, for every moment of a season and a team so enchanting and so healing, understand this. The Tigers gentlemen gathered here today and their departed brothers gave to this city, to this state, and to this region the greatest sports gift of our lifetime.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next speaker enjoyed a long broadcasting career covering several decades of Detroit sports. It included a stint working alongside Ernie Harwell. He was the voice of summer during the 1968 season. From 1967 to 1972, he worked with Ernie. Please welcome a winner of the Ty Tyson Award for Excellence in Sports Broadcasting, two-time Michigan Sportscaster of the Year, Ray Lane.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you again. Good to see you. What a wonderful celebration it was. It almost continued more than a year. Many of those 68 players, as Len referred to, are no longer with us. A few are unable to travel these days. But memories of their diamond achievements are still with us. First off, many thanks to the Ilitch organization, General Manager Al Avila, Tiger management and players for really making this possible this weekend. Outstanding. And I'm honored to be included in this group, as I was one of the broadcasters and had the great fortune not only to work with George Kell, but the late and great Ernie Harwell. Working conditions a lot better these days than they were over Tiger Stadium, but it's a great view to that field as we hung over just home late to watch the action and to cover it. And after that narrow miss of '67 season, the Tigers in spring training decided they had a winning attitude right from the start of spring training. They talked about not only winning the pennant, but they talked about going to the World Series. The popular slogan they had around this town at that time for this Tiger was, "Sock it to 'em, Tigers." And they did. Some of the albums are still available if you want to buy them. They're on tape now. Once they moved into first place, they stayed there. They only gave it up a couple of times, and the longest losing streak, I believe, was 4 out of 5 games. Dick Tracewski helped the cause on that when he came through with a home run, and that helped the Tigers win at Washington. By the way, there was a fellow by the name of McLean just getting started on that season, throwing a 7-hitter at Washington, and Kaline batting in 6 runs in that game. The middle of June, the Tigers had fought their way past the Indians and the Orioles, fought them off. Mickey Stanley's 3-run homer against Boston on June 20th opened the gap to 8.5 games. All-Star time, it was 27 games over the 500 mark. They were not only winning, but they were bringing Detroit, as Lynn said, back to respectability after the civil unrest of 1967. They were having fun, too, by the way, besides in the clubhouse, on the field, away from the, as I mentioned earlier, Jim Northrup had a wonderful day out in Anaheim. He either went 4 for 4 or 4 for 5. Had a brand new blue suit standing by the swimming pool after the game was over with a couple of his teammates, And he said, you know, I'm going so good now, I think I can walk on water. He took one step at the 8th foot and went right down over his head. So he got a new suit the next day. Pinch hitter Jim Price connected for a home run and only beat the Red Sox earlier in the year, but back here in Detroit, he hit a home run for Cleveland's Sudden Sam McDowell. McDowell, a pretty good guy, could really hum it. They found McDowell at 2 o'clock in the morning, the Detroit police did, and he was riding on top of a statue cursing Northrop. There were great plays from center fielder Mickey Stanley. Tommy Matchik had that double that you referred to in the 9th inning to beat the Orioles. Nick Tracewski had that home run. As I mentioned, Sudden Sam McDowell hadn't got over how the Tigers had treated him. At Tiger Stadium, Gates Brown was called upon to pinch hit. He was in the locker room. Had a couple of hot dogs, just got the mustard on it. And Mayo said, I want Gator. It was going to pitch hit a little earlier than usual. Gates got up, no batting practice, took a swing, hit a double, slid into second, and his old D was a different color. The mustard had come through. Cash, by the way, loved to have some fun. Ray Oyler, as I mentioned, wasn't hitting. So Cash suggested that he go out and get his eyes tested. He got his eyes tested, brought 2 pair of glasses. The glasses, one for day games, one for night games. And Norm said to him, you know, your hitting hasn't improved, but you do look like a German tank commander. Tigers were having fun, as I mentioned. Just ask Denny McLean. He was reeling off the victories, and it's time he would find time to get away from the ballpark and play the organ. I can still hear it. A little bit off key, too. Was that a Wurlitzer? Was that a Hammond? Never mind. Was it? That's why we wondered about your playing. You couldn't hear. Never mind. Is that true? Okay, good. Mickey Lolich was just warming up in the second half of the season. And how he loved to ride that motorcycle of his. Ride it to Tiger Stadium and the fans all waiting there. Stanley, by the way, you were riding the bicycle too, weren't you? Mick, you had a motorcycle, Mickey, didn't you, Stanley? Oh, I guess he did. I know he did. Anyway, let's go to the World Series and get it over with. Not only did the series end up with a Tigers favor 4-3 and that winning play and winning hit by Don Wirt in St. Louis, hundreds of fans were celebrating not only in Detroit, but they were at the airport. Tigers and their wives and girlfriends were celebrating in St. Louis. They hadn't got home yet. They had a closed metro airport. There were too many fans out there, and they thought that maybe somebody was going to injure. The charter plane ended up at Willow Run. Everything was okay. Tigers were still. So what I'd like to say is to you fellas, thank you for making an exciting, wonderful season for me and for the best fans in baseball, the Detroit fans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Our final speaker today was in his 16th season with the Tigers in 1968, having been an all-star in 13 of the previous 15 seasons. Clearly established as one of the premier players in all of baseball, his focus had turned solely toward the goal of winning a World Series championship for the city of Detroit. A broken arm would keep him out of the lineup for several weeks that summer, but he was fully recovered for the World Series, and he hit .379 with 2 home runs and 8 RBIs, as well as a memorable bases-loaded single in Game 5 that brought the Tigers back from a 3-2 deficit in the 7th inning when they were facing elimination. Tigers fans, please welcome Hall of Famer Al Kaline.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. This is going to be a lot shorter than those other two. It's such an honor to be up here today with my teammates from our great 1968 World Championship team. It's hard to believe it's been 50 years, but the memories of that magical season are still fresh in our mind. It's truly wonderful that the Ilitch family and the Tiger organization are making this weekend possible. Thank you very much. When I think back to our World Series run in '68, it really began the year before, when we were one game shy of heading to the World Series. You can't imagine how much motivation that gave us. We knew something special was coming in '68, simply because we wouldn't settle for anything less. Over the course of that season, we felt momentum was always on our side. We had one 4-game losing streak the whole season, and that's because of our darn good pitching staff that we had. It was nearly impossible to beat our 1-2 punch of Denny McLain and Mickey Lolich. They dominated and gave us a chance to win every game. We won a lot of games that year because we were truly a complete team. With our pitching staff and our big bats like Willie Horton, Bill Freehand, Jim Northrup, Mickey Stanley, Norm Cash, Gates Brown, Dick McAuliffe, we were good. Even when the ball club was down 3-1 in the World Series, everyone in our clubhouse still believed we could come back against the Cardinals, and boy, we sure did. This is truly a remarkable group behind me. On behalf of all of us, I'd like to emphasize how important the Tiger fans and the city of Detroit were to our success. The passion and energy in the stands at Tiger Stadium was incredible. It was an extremely rough time for the city, and we're proud to have played a part in lifting the spirit of Detroit. In closing, speaking on behalf of everyone from the '68 team, this weekend is so special for us to celebrate, reminisce about our time together and the World Championship we brought back to Detroit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. Now I'll ask all the members of the 1968 championship team who are on stage with us, as well as Bill Freehand's wife, Pat, and former Tigers employee Donna Beam, the wife of former Tigers trainer Bill Beam. She'll represent former Tigers pitcher Fred Lasher, to please proceed to the blue carpet for the presentation of today's gifts. And as you do so, I ask Tigers fans, please turn your attention to the video board for more great memories from that remarkable season.
I really feel that by going through '67 that everybody came in spring training the following year in '68 saying, hey, we should have won last year. We're going to win this year.
We lost that last game at home after we played back-to-back doubleheaders. We knew we were the best team. And we went to spring training, and there was no contest.
You could just feel that team, Kaline, Cash, McAuliffe, just Horton. You just feel that like we're going to win this thing. So guys, get on board because we're going to win.
We went into that year knowing we had the ability to win ball games, and it was so special coming from behind.
We brought the city back together a little bit. We gave them something of interest to look forward to and come and see the Tigers play.
We had so much belief in each other. We always said, not inning over, we always said the last strike.
Denny was 100%. Once he puts his uniform on, he gave you everything he had. Be able to play on the same team as Denny McLain having that 31 in 6 years. Nobody's going to do that again. Bill Freehan, he was a force. He was behind the plate. He played all the time. He was tough. He got big hits for us all the time. He led the pitching staff. He was really the captain of our ball club.
We never worried about ourselves playing. We always worried about our teammates. And I think that helped us grow in life at this game about a team sport.
And you have Eddie Matthews, Al Kaline, Norm Cash, great veteran players. We were a loose team. You know, we had a lot of fun.
Smith made probably the biggest decision ever in a World Series that any manager could possibly make, bringing in a center fielder to play shortstop in the World Series.
And Lolich, you know, he was a two-pitch pitcher. He was a freak. He was tough to catch.
Mickey went on to be the most valuable player in the World Series. Well, Willie Horton was one of the great hitters that we had. Great power, hit the ball all fields. I'm so proud I was able to go to the World Series and be part of that team.
I'm 75. I'm still part of it. I'm still part of the people. And, you know, like I say, people who made my career. I didn't never play this game through Willie Horton. I played through the fans.
Feels like it was yesterday to me, you know. We'll say 50 years a long time, but I think maybe when we get up in the morning and start trying to move, John, it is 50 years. So.
Become a world champion. It's a once-in-a-lifetime feeling. I mean, you can't express it.
It is now time to present gifts to the members of the 1968 World Series champion Detroit Tigers, each signifying the place in franchise history they have earned with an unforgettable season culminating in the Tigers' third World Series championship. First, the members of that team are now positioned in front of famed road jerseys with the numbers that they wore in 1968. Of course, it was while wearing that classic road uniform with a block-lettered Detroit on the front that the Tigers won Game 7 of the World Series, clinching their place in history. These framed jerseys also include the logo that was specially created for the 50th anniversary of their World Series championship, as well as an image of their Topps baseball card from the 1968 season. The inscription on each of the plaques reads, "The legacy of your 1968 World Series championship and its impact on the city of Detroit will live on forever." Next, we invite the current members of the Detroit Tigers to the field for a special presentation commemorating the place the 1968 championship season holds in our hearts. Of the Detroit Tigers who have joined us are here to present scaled replica versions of the 1968 World Series trophy to each of today's honorees. The actual World Series trophy from that year was painstakingly replicated to the tiniest detail, making sure each flag and logo appears on the scaled version just as it does on the original. These amazing individual works were created by Three-Dimensional Services Group in Rochester Hills, who took on the project with great pride and appreciation for what this team has meant to this region for 50 years. The presentation of these trophies by members of the current team represents the appreciation today's players have for those who came before them, for helping to define what it means to wear the Old English D, and further strengthening the bond that exists between the Tigers and their fans. We now invite the current Tigers to present these gifts to the members of the 1968 World Series champion Tigers. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we ask that you please rise. 50 years have passed since Mickey Lolich saw his final pitch of the World Series popped up into the sky and then settle down